And hello again. Nice to speak with you all again. It's the year 2026. And as expected, we have another fantastic year coming up in our sport, the sport of track and field. And in this podcast and YouTube channel, we focus solely on college track and field. And we're going to focus on Division One. That's where a lot of our stories come from. And so we're going to just stick to that theme until we branch out. I want to do things a little differently this year with the preview than I have done in years past. I tend to have always broken it out into sprints and hurdles with jumps and I'm gonna just do a few things different. And even in this preview, we're not gonna focus really solely on the mark, but just sort of the topics at hand. I am going to stick to the four leg format that I've really have grown to love and I think really works well for this channel. So just humor me here. So here are the four topics. I'm going to let you know right out the gate what they are. Leg one, we're going to focus on our returning champions. Leg two, we're calling it the freshman class. Leg three, we're going to look at old faces in new places, which will be our transfers. In leg four, we're going to talk about the strongest roster on paper. Because if you've been following my channel for any number of time, for any number of years, you know that I personally do not like to give a prediction of the team title, this early in the season. One of the primary reasons for that, withdrawal is that I do not want to sort of put my foot in my mouth, or I may big up someone who is, you know, going to eventually become injured or someone who's transferred and we just don't know enough about yet. The season hasn't happened yet. It's kind of how I view it. So when I said the strongest roster on paper, we're just going to look at who has the strongest grouping together. Based off what they say and what they've done in previous years, we'll review and say, okay, this looks like the best roster. And that's going to include the transfers, which I think because of all the things going on with the college football transfer portal, forgot that the college track and field transfer portal was extremely active. And we had champions transfer, which is, kind of unheard of, but that's happened. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And as I said, we'll start with our defending champions, and we'll start on the women's side with the defending champions. And the event that I want to start at, or the person rather, is Amanda Mole of Washington. The Mole twins are doing, outstanding work there at the University of Washington. They both have walked away with titles now, Amanda and her sister. But this is about the defending indoor champion, and Amanda Mole is the defending indoor champion, and she did something incredible last year, jumping over 16 feet, setting the NCAA record multiple times. And to be fair, she did not have the same outdoor season that she had indoors. However, we can't ignore the incredible indoor season that she had. And I think she's going to come back, motivated and ready for an outstanding 2026. So I look forward to seeing what she will do. The next athlete I want to talk about is Taylor Kessner of Wisconsin. Um, Big Ten always known for their throwers, and she's kind of on that list. Sort of the next person to include. Taylor Kessner, an outstanding thrower from Wisconsin, and I think someone that's going to be in the team title hunt in her event, which is the weight throw. So, she won last year, so it wouldn't be a surprise to us if she won it again this year. She is, to me, amongst all the competitors that are returning, I think the one with the least amount of competition. And that's not to, downplay those she will compete against, but I think that she has the strongest shot, I think, of anyone to defend her title. I think, Amanda Mole has to worry about her sister. And that's just one person, but we'll talk about others later within this video. But I think Taylor Kessner of Wisconsin is in strong position to defend her title. The next event is the 5K, and that's, of course, Doris Lemongold of Alabama. Doris, what can you say? Every time we're mentioning her, she's won a title. whether it's a conference title, a regional title, or a national title. She just has been a winner her entire time that she's been there at Alabama, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. I do think the 5K, which is her defending event, um, is going to be difficult. I think this is going to be a potentially very loaded field. I think you have a great group of young freshmen. You had some key transfers that I think are going to, challenge her. Like Kessner, she, is a strong defending champion, but um, she has been beaten by some of her regular competitors. So we'll see. Um, and I'm not really, confident that anyone will take her down, but Kessner and Lemengol are two strongest defending champions. Then in the shot put, we have Axelina Johansson of Nebraska. Axelina continues to excel in this event. I don't recall picking her when I did my preview last year to win, but she was a dark horse, or a competitor we could not ignore. And she just continued to prove that, I am capable. And I think she has the toughest competition because I think the shot put is loaded. I think this is going to be a great event. I wouldn't be shocked if we had a new um, NCAA record holder in this event. I think Aglina's going to run into competition early. I mean, she's got to go up against several strong competitors within her conference. There's a great throws program at Minnesota as well. It's producing in Wisconsin that's producing top tier throwers. So, I don't want to negate what she's done, but I think she has one of the tougher roads. But Nebraska, as I've said on this channel multiple times within the past 2 years alone, they've been great at developing field athletes. They're the best at the technical side of the sport. They're going to have their technique down, and if their mental is there, it's going to be very hard to beat them. Moving to the triple jump, we have the defending champion Agor Dwal of Oklahoma. Oklahoma is becoming a really great program with the jumps. We know they had a defending, well, not he's not defending, he's moved on, but they had the national champion last year for the men's side outdoors, Brandon Green. And, Agor Dwal to me is, I don't think there's really a whole lot of competition that can beat her. She did not retain the national title outdoors, but I think, getting her head back on and returning back to Oklahoma and their ability to develop their triple jumpers, I think she's in a strong position to defend her title as well. I don't want to negate the field because it is a very talented field, but I don't think the triple jump is as deep as it was last year. Then we have the mile, and we have Wilma Nielsen of Oregon. Coach Flanagan at Oregon doing a great job at developing that women's distance program for Oregon, and Nielsen is just a part of that really deep group. She may not even be the best miler on the team, if we're being honest, because there's quite a few there. I just think she's the best come competition time. I think the mile will be competitive this year, very competitive, and it'll be interesting to see if she can hold on to that defending to that NCAA title. The mile has gone through constant change within the recent years on the women's side. We've seen the NCAA record broken a couple of times, and we've seen the all-time list constantly shift. And I think that's not going to change. Our theme for a very, very long time on this channel was old records that lasted forever being broken. The collegiate record, I don't think has lasted forever for the women's mile. However, it's been there, and it is an impressive record. So I wouldn't be shocked if it fell. And then let's move to the sprint side of things. You have in the 60, you got Deja DeFran of USC. That was a great transfer for her last year. Many wondered why would she leave a good situation in Florida State, but we saw what happened. The USC coaching staff, not just with their men, but with their women, it seems that they've kind of got it under control with developing the short sprints. And, she ran a 7:09 last year. That's an impressive time. And with India Mayberry coming back and she having a rough outdoor season because of injury, And yes, it's, a really interesting indoor season that we're looking at because we've got some freshmen, we got some transfers that are going to really give her a run for her money. Um, Deja Dufresne came out of nowhere to win that title. She was in the final, but no one had picked her to potentially win. She was going to be a competitor. I planned her walking out of there with an All American award, but she put that 7:09, and she's kind of got the best time returning in the field. She is going to run up against a strong field. The 60 is loaded this year. It is deep, deep, deep. But I think that she's got a really strong shot at defending her title. I could see her running 7:04 or 7:03. And I think it's going to take a low 7:0 to win the title this go around because of the depth and quality of the field. Now moving to the 60 hurdles, we have Jaya Covington of Texas A&M. I think that she will have a challenge because I think that last year indoors, um, there was not a favorite really at all because she didn't win a major race until the NCAA title because she didn't win the SEC title. And a lot of those athletes at the SEC are returning along with a really good group of freshmen and some major transfers. I do think she has a strong shot. She's a part of a really great roster at Texas A&M. I wouldn't put it past her to win, but I do think she's going to have some challenge. Let's see what she can do. She has the luxury of having that 7:93 under her belt. There aren't that many returning athletes under 8 seconds, but there's enough. And our last event on the women's side is the 200. We'll look at India Mayberry of TCU. She's going to have a challenge because of how strong the 200 is. However, I want to remind everyone the 200 was competitive last year and she impressed everyone last year. We can't ignore, the transfer from Lenore Ryan, Alexis Brown at South Carolina. I do not want to ignore her, but I want to give props to India Mayberry. She ran 22:30. That is one of the best times in NCAA history, and I need to remind everyone she was a freshman last year. She is a sophomore. She's learned. I believe she's healed up and kind of ready to go. And it's unfortunate that things didn't work out the way that we wanted them to for her outdoors because I thought that she could potentially drop under 22 seconds outdoors. But her biggest competitor is going to come from Jamesia Ford, who won the outdoor title, even though she was dealing with a hamstring strain. I think with no major world championship or Olympic games, coaches are probably going to be, I hope, hopefully a little bit smarter because I didn't think Jamesia should have did all those events that she did. I think putting that much pressure on her wasn't smart. But she's already run under 22 seconds. She has a 21:09 under her belt. And I think with that, and plenty of time to rest, she's going to be held to beat indoors. But India has already done it because Jamisha was healthy last indoor season and still lost. Moving to the men's side, we'll look at the defending champions for the men. We'll start with the long jump, and we'll go with Kelsey Daniel of Texas. Yes, Kelsey Daniel of Texas. I actually thought that he had graduated, but nope, he had a graduate year available, and he really put on a show with the last indoor championship. He was not someone we predicted to win, although he did have a good 2024. He really put the hammer down at the indoor championship. I mean, he really it looked like it was over from the moment he got there. And I think of all the defending champions on the men's side, I think he's going to have one of the toughest roads because I think the long jump there was some major transfers and some really talented incoming freshmen. And I think that there's some healed athletes. I do think he'll have a challenging role, but I'm not really sure if any of them can beat him. So we'll see. Now moving to the 5K, we have Brian Musso of Oklahoma State. And we saw what type of season he was ready to have. He had a great cross country season. Brian Musso, hate to say, was kind of caught up in that unfortunate conversation amongst coaches in regards to having athletes from other countries who may be a bit older competing. That ended up being a really big story, unfortunately. And it felt, and let's be honest, American and I support Team USA all the way, but it felt like an attack to the foreign athletes, regardless of their ages. If the NCAA has given them an opportunity to compete, I think we should respect that. Um, I don't think it's really their fault. And I think that if coaches have an issue with that, they need to bring it to the governing body and force some change. And I think, that's going to happen. I really do think that that's coming. But that doesn't negate the talent that we're seeing from the foreign athletes on the collegiate level. And I think Brian Musell is very, very talented. Oklahoma State is a really good program. He finished fourth at the cross country championships. Um, and I kind of expect for that to continue, that level of success to continue, because he ran with such ease last year at the 5K. On the last two laps, I believe, he just really didn't, he wasn't in danger of losing. Hampton Samuel was going to be there, of course, but I think Brian Musso is in a strong position to defend his title, specifically if Hampton Samuel was planning to double again. Then we move to the shot put and look at Tariq Robinson O'Hagan of Ole Miss. I've mentioned his name a lot on this channel, and I don't think that's going to change. I think he is, of all those that are competing, has the easiest road. Um, I do not think this is a very deep shot put group. And again, I'm not attacking the athletes competing. This just doesn't seem as deep as it was last year, although there's plenty of talent. Um, and I think some of my, I guess, lack of interest is because I'm just really convinced no one's beating him. Now, he has been beaten before, of course, but last indoor season, he looked really unstoppable, and I don't think that's going to change. Then the triple jump, we have Jonathan Ceremus, who I think is probably our biggest transfer. Well, no, one of our two big transfers on the men's side. He was at Missouri, and we didn't see him outdoors. And I think that's because the transfer was already in place. He completed for France in the World Championship, so he's got some international competition under his belt at the professional level. He's very talented, as we have learned, because he won the triple jump last year as a freshman. I do think this is a really deep field um, on the triple jump, but I still think he might be cream of the crop, and he's now at Texas Tech. And we need to really talk about Texas Tech and how deep their program is, and they've kind of hit a hot streak. They have three incredible athletes coming next fall. And I think you've heard about it. Tate Taylor and Jake Odie Jordan, who's now in Texas, no longer in DC, along with another talented JUCO athlete, or Division two athlete rather, that's a great hurdler. That's being added to a program that's already, full of depth. Texas Tech is here. They won an NCAA title, and it doesn't look like they're going to be slowing down anytime soon. And I think he's a big part of that. Um, in the 60 hurdles, we have Jacoby Tharp of Auburn, and he, like Jonathan, got a taste of the professional level last year, competing for Team USA in the 110 high hurdles. Um, I think he's the next big guy in this event. I think we saw some chinks in the armor that is Grant Holloway. He had a very rough 2025. I think he's going to rebound this year, but I think that we know who is going to be the person to dethrone him, at least within Team USA, will probably be Jacoby. I don't think there's really anyone in the collegiate ranks that's hanging with him. It's a strong group, but I think it's going to be hard to knock him off his horse. Jacoby is a very talented hurdler. He has phenomenal technique. He has really sort of the perfect body size to be a great hurdler. If you were to draw a hurdler, with ironically AI, you would probably want to draw Jacoby. I think he's just that good. Then the 400, you have Will Floyd of Georgia, who I think, Georgia has done pretty well indoors with the development of their 400 runners. And I think the one thing left with Coach Carol Smith Gilbert is to get them to translate that success outdoors. She's been able to do that with the women's team, but with the men's group, it just that seems to be lacking. But as we saw with all the stories about Georgia's, excellent signing, this is a very loaded team. A lot of it is potential because it's young, but I do think this is a very loaded group within the 400. I think he is going to have some, a tough time defending it because there was some transfers that I think I was like, oh, that was a smart transfer for you. That was a really smart transfer for you. I think you're going to really elevate your game. Um, like schools like Florida and Texas A&M really kind of reloaded in the 400. Florida, in particular, to me, had a very disappointing 2025. And I just from being a fan of the program and watching Mike Holloway coach, I immediately said he's going to look at that and immediately seek to improve that group. And there's a lot of talented youngsters. This to me is the one event that's wide open. I think Will Floyd will have some challenges defending his title, but we need to give him this respect because he did win it. In Georgia, that was their second in a row. Then the 800, you have Matthew Erickson of Oregon. Um, Oregon is just, it seems the transition from the Pac 12 to the Big Ten worked in their favor more than any other school. It benefited Oregon in so many ways to move on to the Big Ten. Because for me, for the longest time, I thought that if with their distance program, there weren't a lot of great distance programs out west. It was kind of just them, Washington, and Stanford. And that was kind of it. Now that they're in the Big Ten, they have Wisconsin, they have Michigan, they have Michigan State, they have Penn State, they have Nebraska, which every now and then is going to put together a decent, distance group, specifically middle distance. I just, it seems that the transition elevated the program even higher. And Erickson is a part of a really deep group, but I think they're looking to improve their middle distance performance from last indoor season. And I think Matthew Erickson is a strong returning champion. I think he is in a really good position to defend his title. And Oregon's got, the luck of the draw with a transfer portal here with Peyton Bear transferring from from Mississippi State to Oregon. He was not only the outdoor decathlon champion, but he was the indoor heptathlon champion. And I think that of all the multi-event athletes that we have, and it is a really good group, this is probably the best group we've had in a while. Do I think it was like when it was Leo Nussbauer and all those great Georgia heptathletes? I think it's close to that, which is why I'm really excited to see what happens. I think he is the cream of the crop, not just because he's a defending champion. I think we need to really acknowledge his great performances. But I think this is a really good group of multi event athletes. You got a great group at Nebraska, great group at Illinois, and then Oregon, obviously, with Peyton Bear. This should be an interesting event come indoors. And now we can transition to leg two. And the second leg is freshman class. So we'll look at the women first, and we'll start with Dana Wilson of Tennessee. Dana Wilson is kind of a social media star, at least as it runs on my feed, because every single time a video of her popped up, it was her running away from the field in just breaking speed. It looked like a professional athlete running against middle schoolers. But this was a high school senior putting the smack down on her fellow high school competitors. She almost broke 11 seconds, and to me, she did not seem like she was overcoached or she was ran into the ground. I think that the development for her was actually pretty smart. When it was time to shut her down, they shut her down to prepare her for what should be, I think, a strong freshman season. I think Coach Ross, things have not gone the way that he may have wanted them to at Tennessee, but I think he's kind of gotten the hang of things. I mean, you're in a really tough conference. SEC is really hard. And I think Dana Wilson is ready to take the SEC by storm. Just based off her times alone, she already can compete. So I think of all the great young sprinters, I think Dana Wilson probably will come away as the top young lady. And then we have the woman who I think will be freshman of the year. I think she's already kind of done that in the cross country space. That's Jane Hedengren of BYU. If I mispronounced her name or anyone's name, please forgive me. Charge it to my head, not my heart. BYU really is kind of in their bag with distance. I know what I said about Oregon men, but I think BYU also leveled up as a program. Moving to the Big 12 really has helped them because the Big 12 is full of great distance programs. You have Oklahoma State, you have Oklahoma, um, you have Colorado, and you have Texas Tech, which on occasion will have great distance runners too. But I think BYU really is sort of the cream of the crop. Oh, and Iowa State, by the way, when it comes to developing great distance runners on the women's side. And she's so talented. She was the only person that was given Doris any real challenge. And she wasn't afraid and she learned from that. I think she's going to be the name we hear moving forward in the event. So, Jane Hedengren of BYU, get ready to hear her name a lot. Then I think another big name is Kaya Crook, who is now at Arizona. And you guessed it, she's another talented high jumper heading to Arizona, which, Arizona's doing a pretty good job of recruiting them. You had Miss Cunningham, who was just there, who's now a pro, who was winning national titles at Arizona. Now you have Kaya Crook, and I think she's ready to make an impact, early on. So we'll be hearing her name for Arizona, and Arizona no longer in the Pac-12, obviously in the Big 12. It is a challenging conference, but I think when it comes to the women's high jump, she's going to be there. Timmy Tope Adeshina at Texas Tech, I think, is going to be the one to win the conference title. But I think when it comes to who will be the best freshman high jumper, I think it'll be Kaya Crook. A really big name in throws is Jessica Oji of who's now at Penn. And the reason why I brought her up, she's kind of been a name that's been floating around for a while. I think many people thought that she was going to go to Ole Miss because of her talent. I think we forgot the type of student she was. Because, obviously going to Penn, an Ivy League school, you got to really have not only the grades but the test scores to match. And she has both, along with being a terrific athlete. And I think she's an immediate threat in the throwing event. So I'm curious to see which event ends up being her best event. Uh, Now that she's on the collegiate level, I don't want to put any expectations with her with a specific throwing event because I've learned with watching athletes when they get to the collegiate level and they have to carry the collegiate weight, one they're going to eventually favor. So I'm curious to see what that becomes with Jessica Oji because I do think she's going to be able to make an immediate impact. And then the last women on the women's side of the freshman first class, we have Eden Robinson of Florida. Florida had a very strong recruiting season last year on the women's side in particular, and I think it's because they had to. They were a little top heavy. It allowed for their women to perform at a very high level. Um, However, it did not look like the Florida that we had saw with the Kyra Jeffersons, the Shayla Sanders, and even with the Talitha Diggs and early on in her career. They looked like a shell of themselves. They didn't have a really competitive 4x4. The 4x1 looked strong until we know what happened at the NCAA championships. Unfortunately, Habiba Harris, their hurdler, went down. I think Eden Robinson is going to add to the team point total. I think she's ready to compete at a high level in the heptathlete now. And there's also another major transfer that happened for Florida in that event. So they may have a 1-2 punch for the women's side in the Gators, but I'm curious to see what Eden Robinson does. We seem to always, every couple years, run into the next athlete on the women's side that's going to dominate for 2 or 3 years. Last year, we saw Jaden O'Brien leave from Notre Dame, and she kind of carried it for 2 years. And I'm wondering if Eden Robinson is going to be in, the next athlete like that. I think it looks to be that way. I think she's a very strong competitor. Um, she's in a tough conference, the SEC, but I think that's actually going to serve her some good because she's at a school where there's a lot of potential champions and All Americans. So she's surrounded by talent. So if she's not motivated to do anything of the championship level, I think she might be at the wrong school, but I don't think she is. So I look forward to hearing her name. On the men's side, where I think we've got some interesting candidates, because I think the young men last year really kind of caught the sport by storm and they kind of became social media stars. And I think we're in for another experience like that this year because there's a great group of high schoolers this year, probably the deepest. But in one particular event, it was the deepest I think we ever seen it, and that was the men's 100. I think we had three athletes, maybe four, go under 10 seconds in the 100. That's now a thing now. I can't believe we're here, but we are. To be the elite high school athlete in the country, it's not just running 10-1 or even running 10-0. You have to be sub 10. You have to be able to compete at a national meet with pros because the young man that I'm thinking of, Maurice Gleaton of Georgia, not of Florida, not of USC, not of Texas A&M or LSU, of Georgia, Maurice Gleaton, he's there, I think, to take the program to the next step. He does have an amazing teammate to train with that's also young and Braden Williams. But we've yet to see Georgia have that breakout sprinter from indoor to outdoors, and I think he may be the guy. Um, Gleaton, with his technique, is one of the best technical sprinters I've seen for someone young. He has a pretty solid start, but his dry phase and his lift looked pretty good. He's at Georgia and he's competing against some really good and talented teammates. But I think he may already be the head of the class there. So I don't know how long he's going to be at Georgia. Athletes are staying at their universities a little longer because of NIL, which is to me a really good thing. But I think that he's one of the ones that I wouldn't be shocked if he left early because I think he is just that talented. The next big name is Owen Powell of Washington. Owen did a lot of things in high school, breaking national records, running across my timeline quite a bit. And I think he's at the best school for a middle distance runner. Um, and this is not to be controversial. I think Washington may be the best when it comes to developing milers. Um, if we just look at the evidence over the past 5 years, is there anything that you've seen to negate that? Does anyone have any evidence to suggest otherwise? I think, the indoor record holder in the mile for a high school athlete, he's already run sub 4 minute. He's already run sub 3:57. He's ready to compete now. And he is surrounded. I mean, absolutely surrounded by at least two or three teammates that could already potentially win the mile. I think he landed in the best situation. If his head is strong, which I think it is, I think he may, of all the talented freshmen, be the top one. And I know what Gleaton is capable of. I know what the other two that I have, other three that I have listed here are capable of. But the times he was putting up last indoors to me as a freshman, I'm gonna say as a high school senior, I mean, I just kept seeing like, is he really gonna compete in college or is he just ready to go pro? Because this is a very talented young distance runner, and I don't think anyone would disagree with me on that. It was very clear the smart decision to go to Washington, and he had Also has a really talented freshman teammate in Tyler Billiard. So we may actually end up talking about him. I mean, you never know. He's, again, surrounded by a bunch of talent and with a great coaching staff. And the next big name we'll look at is Tomoso Masakanye of Florida. He's another international athlete. I think that because he is an international athlete, and I've noticed this with a lot of international athletes, they seem to not be intimidated when they get to the NCAA level, regardless of age. They seem to just be ready to show up because more often than not, if you're coming in as an international athlete, you've already competed on an international stage and walked away with championship level pedigree, and he's done that. Florida has really needed to redevelop their jumps core. It's been a while since they had that incredible depth that they had a couple years ago when they were winning NCAA titles just seemingly every year. And that's always been a key to a great national title team for Florida is what type of jumpers do they have? And I think that he may be their next big guy. Another big name freshman that I think is ready to make an immediate impact is Adam Carter of Texas State. Yes, Texas State. Really doing a number, producing great throwers. And this is another one. Um, I think Adam Carter, because again, the event that he's expected to compete in, which is the shot put, because that is an event that's dominated by Tariq Robinson O'Hagan of Ole Miss. I'm not expecting for him to win a national title, but I do think he's going to be the top freshman. And shot put is an event where I've noticed very rarely do you have all American freshmen. It is a very difficult event. The shot put itself is heavier. You have to adjust to it. And we'll see how he adjusts. And then our final freshman I want to talk about is Luke Pelmans, or excuse me, Pelkmans. He's at Illinois. He's being coached by Petros Kiprianou, who we know is a master when it comes to field events. He's also a master when it comes to multi events. Um, I don't think he's going to be, challenging Peyton Bear. He could, but I wouldn't. I'm not expecting that. What I am expecting is for him to be the best freshman in that event. I do think he'll be competitive, and I do think he will be an All American. I really do. I think this was a great recruit for Petros. I think Illinois making him the head track and field coach was such a smart decision on their part because their program I think is very competitive in many events, not just in the multi events, but in many events. They've got a pretty good sprint groups, a pretty good jump, not even pretty good, a great jumps group. I think they're moving the throws into the right direction. Curious to see how that further develops, and their runners or their distance runners seem to be moving along the way they want them to. So it was a great hire, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what this young man does against a really deep multi-event field. Now moving to our third leg, this is old faces in new places. And it's not meant to be controversial. It's to highlight, and I said this last year, the transfer portal has worked wonders for some athletes. I think they've needed it. And it's not necessarily a knock on the coaches. It could just be the culture that they may not necessarily have any control of, and that could be the school culture. It could also be, an athlete thinks that they can go across the country away from their mom and dad. And once they experience life away that far away and they're only seeing their parents maybe twice a year, that may be too much for them. And so they may need a school closer. So there's a myriad of reasons why an athlete transfers. But we'll get started with the women's big time transfers. And there are five here. And that's kind of what I'm going to stick to. Five for the women, five for the men, just like I did five for the freshmen. Um, but on the women's side, you have Alexis Brown of South Carolina. I don't think anyone could ignore what she did at the Division II level. She was very talented. She ran 10.93. Why she was on that level to begin with, we never know. But she made the transition from Lenoir Rhyne to South Carolina. Her and Jamisha Ford, I feel like this is the perfect person to train with Jamisha Ford because she, I think, is ready to take that next step when it comes to sprinting. She's already a sub 11-second runner. I think she's going to be the 100-meter queen to Jamisha's 200-meter queen. I think this will give Jamisha the opportunity, I think, again, to really kind of focus on the 200. I really hope that she doesn't try 4 events again. I would hate to see her get her hamstring strained again. But to me, Alexis Brown transferring to South Carolina was such a smart choice. The other big transfer to South Carolina, and yep, as you can see, they were very strong in the portal. Akala Garrett, who's a hurdler who transferred from Texas to South Carolina, and Texas kind of went through a mass exodus. We may never get the story of what happened, but it just looks like things were not going well for Coach Flo with the group that he had. But he's an outstanding coach, and I think he's going to re up. But I was shocked when Akala Garrett transferred from Texas to South Carolina because things were going so well. She is the top returning 400 hurdler. Um, I think again I was shocked. I think she's got the speed to be a great low hurdler. I think her technique over the short hurdles indoors just simply needs to improve a little bit. She's already run sub 13 outdoors, but it doesn't really translate to her indoor time. So that's the one area that I think that she will benefit being uh, at South Carolina under Coach Tim Ross. Um, he's probably going to just move her really to the next level. I am so excited to see what she does. Akala Garrett is very talented. And I am, again, stunned that she made the decision to transfer. But I'm so excited because I don't remember South Carolina having this strong of a team. We're talking the Curtis Fry days when he had Shalonda Solomon and Renetta Alexander and Renetta Smith. I mean, when I was in college, he's had a history of great hurdlers and great 400 runners and great short sprinters. This seems to be finally happening for South Carolina. It's been a while, but I think they're going to be tough to beat. The next name is going to be a bit controversial because I'm aware that there may have been other athletes better than her, specifically in the distance events. But I saw her compete up against the top of the top in Division One, and she's coming from a strong program. That's Fleur Templier of Portland, who's now at NC State. NC State just won the cross country uh, NCAA championships. She was there. She was a part of that team. Um, I'm curious to see what happens with all the distance transfers. But her time, her 8:56, made me go, "What's that gonna look like indoors?" Now that she's at NC State, I'm expecting a big jump, which is why I put her here. And I know there will be some of you in the comments who may disagree with me, but I'm really comfortable with putting her name here because I'm really curious to see what she does. Um, moving from Fleur Templier will move to Makeda Linton, who is now at Texas A&M, who was at LSU. This was another surprise transfer to me. Um, and the reason why it was a surprise transfer is because Makeda was doing very well. And LSU, known for their jumpers, and she also was a decent short sprinter. I think that if she spent more time with it, she'd probably be even better. Like I remember looking at her marks, like why don't they let her run the 60 a little more? She's got like a 7.31, 7.32. I'm like, if she really just put her foot down, she probably is a low 7.2, maybe even a high 7.1. I don't doubt that Pat Henry at Texas A&M is going to get the best out of her in that regard. Um, but I think her transfer was one of the smarter ones. It's difficult for you to leave LSU and go to anywhere better, but if you're going to go anywhere from LSU as a jumper, Texas A&M is a great landing spot. Then our last old face and new place on the women's side, um, and she is probably our most traditional transfer. It's Cedrica Williams from Barton County Community College. This is the old way of transferring. um, and she's headed to Tennessee. She was a really talented junior college championship thrower. And this is something that's needed for Tennessee. They need to have, on the women's side in particular, a thrower that can just threaten the conference. And I think she immediately does that. I'm really curious to see how she fits in with Tennessee. I want to see how this elevates their roster. On their overall roster, I have a question mark on it. I'm curious because I need to see them within a couple of meets. Even though I know that one of the legs here today, we're going to talk about who looks the best on paper. Based on paper, I had a big question mark for them. But I didn't have a question mark for her. I think she will be an immediate threat. Now, moving to the men's side, we're looking at, of course, the defending champion on the men's side. Um, I'll say it. It just shocked me that he transferred. And that name is Peyton Bear. I was like, wait, why is he leaving Mississippi State? This felt like almost how things are going in the world right now. Just big country eating little country. This is what it felt like. I was like, what? You won a national title there. What you doing, Peyton? What's going on, sir? It was working so well for you. And he transferred. But if you're going to transfer, you transfer to Oregon because one, likely the NIL package was strong. The facilities are top notch. Nike is not sparing any expense to help make sure that Oregon remains an athletic power. And as you see, their men are in the Final Four when it comes to college football. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that works. Next, we have, and this is another name where when they transferred, I was like, huh? The men kind of really shocked me because I was like, you were fine where you were. But Jamarian Stubbs of Alabama State, who is now at Arkansas. I'm being very honest with you all. I did not see him transferring. That's the honest to God truth. I did not see him transferring. Um, he had an impressive career at Alabama State that included a sub 20 performance in the 200 meters. And if you're going to transfer to a sprint school, Arkansas wasn't really the school I thought. I mean, with you being at Alabama State, Alabama's right there. Then you had LSU, then you had Texas Tech, and this is not to knock Arkansas. His transfer to me was like, okay, I think the NIL package was just really good for him. Then there's a name we already mentioned, Jonathan Ceremis, who transitioned from Missouri to Texas Tech. That one was a head scratcher to me as well because I think Missouri was really doing a good job of developing their jump score. And I thought he was going to be the next big name that they had. And I think he felt differently. Going to Texas Tech, his elevation, and I think part of it, maybe he wanted to compete with a team that's looking for a national title. He wanted to be a part of something big. And I also want to, tip my hat. Texas Tech has been a great jumps program for a while, and that's probably never going to change as long as the head coach is there. Um, his transfer, I did have a question of why, but his was the one I understood the most. Next is Ruben Reyna. Um, I also understand this one, but I got a little question on it because Ruben Reyna went from Arkansas to Washington. And I thought things were going very well for him at Arkansas. And I'm like, Arkansas has the history, they have the facilities, but I'm willing to bet, I think many of you are already thinking this. Washington may have the coaching, in particular with the middle distance events. This is another big name that's being added to what is already a talented roster. I'm looking forward to seeing what the Big Ten championships look like. Michigan, Wisconsin, and Michigan State have kind of had their hands full with Washington and Oregon joining their conference. Um, but Ruben Reyna was a great addition. I actually think this was a smart transfer on his part. Even if he didn't get an NIL package, I would make this transfer too. And then our last old face in a new place is also a traditional transfer, and that's Jordan Davis. And he's a graduate transfer, and he is transferring from South Connecticut State to Georgia. He is a javelin thrower, so we probably won't really see a whole lot from him until outdoors. But we can't be surprised if we see him in the weight throw or some time of fashion indoors for Georgia. That to me is a smart decision. Georgia has been pretty good with developing great throwers, even prior to Coach Gilbert's arrival, but she's kind of like given them much more leeway to recruit and develop great throwers. I think we give Georgia another 2 or 3 years, they may have the top throw program in the South. I think they may surpass Florida in that regard. And I think they kind of already have on the women's side. But I think on the men's side, they're really getting there, specifically in the javelin. And that is leg three. We are done with that. We're going to move on to the final leg, which is the best rosters on paper. And again, we'll look at the top five. And this is just based off what we're looking at now. There could be a change happening or have happened that is not public yet that could make this list seem questionable. But we'll talk more about a team title picture at the end of January. But the best rosters on paper on the women's side, we'll start with the very top. And at the top, I'm putting Georgia. I think Georgia has the strongest roster on the women's side. I think number two is Oregon. And the reason why I have Georgia over Oregon is because the amount of super talented freshmen that Georgia was able to obtain. Georgia had an incredible recruiting class. And although Oregon had a good one, it just wasn't as good as Georgia. I think Oregon is bringing back the most veteran talent, um, but I think it's going to be hard to defeat Georgia. Number three, I have Texas A&M. Texas A&M was also active, as we talked about, one of their athletes in the transfer portal. They also have a great freshman class, and they have a lot of really good returnees. I think the only area where I'm kind of like, I gotta see it is what's gonna happen with their 4x4. But because they're coached by Pat Henry, and he has a great coaching staff that develops really good quarter milers, I think they'll be fine here. Fourth, I have South Carolina. I think of all the teams that I have listed here, especially who I name on five, South Carolina has the greatest chance of vaulting themselves to number one. I think South Carolina did a great job with two stunning recruits out of the transfer portal on Alexis Brown and Akala Garrett. They also have a great group coming back, and they've needed it because at the NCAA championships they looked a little thin. They weren't able to run their 4x4 because they didn't bring an alternate, so they needed some more recruits. So they've got some good freshmen coming in, some good transfers. So it looks like they've added some very much needed depth. Fifth, I will put Florida. Um, Not just Georgia, but Florida had an incredible freshman class. Just incredible. The number two, number three, 400-meter runners in the country with Sydney Sutton and Tyra. I think they're ready to go. They have a great group of short sprinters, which with Coach Holland Scherer there now, I think he's doing a great job of developing that group. I think we'll see them take even another step forward. They're also returning some key sprinters. Gabrielle Matthews, I'm curious to see what becomes of her. I'm curious to see what this 400 group does. Um, that group has been, to me, kind of paper thin the past few years. The development hasn't been quality. I mean, honestly, since Talita left, and really Talita's last year, to me, she took a step back. So I'm curious to see how that's going to be addressed. But on paper, Florida looks very strong. On the men's side, I have Oregon at number one. And that is because to me, I think they can score in so many areas. I think their one weakness is probably the sprints, even though I think they have a decent group. But they're going to be very deep in every distance event, I believe. They're going to be deep in the field events. I think this Oregon team is secretly kind of strong. Um, and if they just want to rely on their distance runners, I think they're one of the few programs that can do that. Number two, I have Texas Tech. And Texas Tech, to me, I think by the end of January, because I wrestled with this, I think they're going to be in front. They're very deep in the sprints, got a good hurdle group, got a great jumps group. Now they've got a national title contender on their squad. Their distance is getting back to the level that it was a few years ago. Um, and I think just overall, they've done a great job of recruiting and developing, and they have a really good coaching staff. Three, I have Florida. I think they're going to rebound. Um, that was a really humbling year last year for them. They just did not seem to have it. And I think some of that was injury, but also their deepest group, which was the 400 group, not a single one of them showed up. Not a single one. They did get hit with the injury bug early on, and they're bringing in a very deep sprint group. They should be pretty competitive there. But the key is how are they going to be health wise, and where some of the inaccuracies and poor development of that long distance group and that short sprint group and the long sprint group. Those three key areas, have those been addressed? I think on paper it looks like they have, but the group there that gives me the biggest question mark is the 400 group, and that's kind of been a hallmark of Florida. Also, there's Arkansas. They're capable of scoring practically anywhere. To me, they're the most serious threat outside of Texas Tech to the number one title. And then number five, the defending champion USC. I think it's no doubt that USC is loaded in the sprints, specifically the short sprints, but that's also a concern to me. It doesn't look like they have the depth that they used to have. Excuse me, on the in the 400. Um, they don't have that big threat in the hurdles that they had. I'm really curious to see how they rebound. How's the team dynamic going to look? Because they've had to make some changes. They are very deep in the short sprints. You're not. Let's just call a spade a spade. If your hope was to win the national title with sprints, as long as USC coaching staff is still there, it's not a wise decision. You would probably want to be a little bit more versatile with your development of your program because they have that part on lock. But I don't think they have the depth on paper to defend their title. So we'll see. So again, on the women's side, Georgia, Oregon, Texas A&M, South Carolina, Florida. On the men's side, Oregon, Texas Tech, Florida, Arkansas, and USC. My honorable mention on the women's side, I'm going to say is Arkansas. And on the men's side, I'm going to say is LSU. All right, so you've made it to the end with me. I'm so grateful and so thankful that so many of you have, picked me as a channel that you listen to. I know this is a long video, so if you've listened to this all the way through, I appreciate you. This took a while to get out. Doing a lot of work personally with my job, accepted a new position. So I apologize for the delay. I meant to have this out in the middle of December. I did want to have a recap of how the collegiate athletes did at the World Championships, but time got beyond me again. The new position, being a supervisor, is a very different life than what I was expecting. But thank you all for listening and supporting. I hope that we have a fantastic 2026 season. I look forward to the comments in the chat. So please like, share, subscribe, and I will talk to you soon. We may have a video coming up next week because this is technically the first official week of the 2026 indoor season as of January. We know that we've had some meets take place in December, but they're I guess, sort of the preview to the indoor season. I really kind of feel that it's underway now. So let's look forward to an excellent record breaking year. And again, please like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you again next week.